much better at answering the questions relative to what you guys need to
Okay,
know.
then I'll ask the question. Okay. So, please, question that's often asked, how does the process work from fertilizing your soil? What do you start with? If you were a new grower in the cannabis industry, what would you start with, and what process would you follow, and what nutrients that you offer would you use to grow plants, and at what stage?
Well, like any plant, it needs nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. These are the macronutrients that sustain growth sort of in plants at the end of the day. So generally nitrogen used primarily like sort of during the vegetative stage, like when it's actually producing leaf matter. Leaves are obviously important because you need photosynthesis. That's where like the chloroform is actually held, and that's what's actually used in the production of obviously the food from the plant. So the plant pushes itself out, wants to actually grow, uses a lot of nitrogen, that sort of phase, and then it wants to actually set flowers and actually produce flowers, and uses a lot of potassium and phosphorus for that sort of phase. So generally when we're talking about a nutrient range in the cannabis sort of context, we have either dual sort of part nutrients, or which is generally like an A and a B, sort of one part for this, one part for that. And they provide generally everything that you have, what you need for the plant to grow, from an NPK as well as your micronutrient. And there's loads of different micronutrients that you need in there.
So which one do you start with? Like, if you had to give a manual for starters growing marijuana for the first time, as a starter pack, what would your instructions be in terms of which one, what do you do first?
Well, you got to choose how you're going to grow in the first place. So that's your first sort of step at the end of the day. Are you going to grow outdoors? Are you going to grow indoors? Are you going to grow in a hydro context? Are you going to grow in pots? Are you going to grow in soil? Are you going to grow in cocoa peat? Are you going to grow completely hydro, which is based in water only? And that then motivates to a certain degree also, well, if you're indoors, then you need lighting. You need horticultural lighting in order to like supplement the sun. If you are growing in a hydro environment, you need something that's soluble in water. If you're growing outdoors, maybe you want to grow an organic way, because we have organics that work very well in going into soils from a fertilizer sort of
So I have another very important question. If you don't do cannabis,
it's a science to actually grow cannabis, and it's a science to grow it really, really well. But at the same point in time, anybody can put a seed in the ground, and it's called weed for a reason, because it grows like weed. So as long as you're giving it all the light and all the fertilizer it needs, it does an amazing job.
And in terms of like me who don't grow cannabis, veggie garden with the bloom and the roots.
Yeah.
Like, if I was just doing this purely for purposes of actually making a veggie garden work, what would I use?
Well, again, vegetables require nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, as does any other plant. But we do stock a range called Atami, a Dutch-based range, market leader in Spain, and they have a very nice developed range of stimulants. Stimulants are things that you sort of use to boost certain phases of growth of the plant. So this one's obviously called Root. Root, and then you get Bloom. They're boosting obviously the fact that like you're early plant development, so you're putting out a lot of roots. This one focuses on actually like stimulating the root development, and then again like when you go into flower, Bloom is going to stimulate your flower development, make sure that you're setting heavier product on the plant, whether it be fruit, such as tomatoes, or whether it be flower, such as cannabis. So you're improving yield, you're improving sort of overall taste profiles, all that kind of stuff. It's loads of stuff. It's a really interesting industry to be in, and it's a very rewarding place to be, is to grow cannabis. Or
There's a lot we can do, and we have ignored our African
And the
brothers
lights?
and sisters.
And the lights?
Would you explain how they work?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a basic
Say
of it.
that with the collaborators, and I'll just name them but a few, our payments partner called
So
very strategic
plants
partner,
generally, like, so the sun produces white light,
mobilizing
yeah?
wallets, solutions,
And in that light is a full spectrum of light of different colors,
sold online.
from your red all the way to your blues on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
We also have
plants,
pioneering
by and large, in a simplified sort of discussion, use blue light and use red light. Those are the lights that are actually generally absorbed. It's a radiation essentially, because it's coming from the sun, that are absorbed by the plant in its photosynthesis when it produces its own food. So when we move into an indoor growing environment, we obviously lose the sun, because now there's obviously a roof between us and the sun. So we have to replace the sun, and we produce what we call horticultural lighting. Now horticultural lighting has been around for quite a long time. They started it probably around the 70s and 80s. It actually originally came from forecourt lighting, like industrial lighting, your high intensity sort of discharge lighting, which is like the stuff that you use in your old spotlights, because they realized that they had the right sort of spectrums in those lights to actually grow plants under. And ever since then, they've been developing it. Now we sit in an environment where we actually, obviously LEDs, light emitting diodes, is the new sort of technology, and we're using that because it's more efficient in terms of power management. It's cooler to run, so in an indoor environment, you're not producing too much sort of heat energy, which is obviously something that you have to manage because you can't have something that's too hot to grow a plant in. So that's where we are now, and that's what this display is. It's showing the various sort of horticultural offerings that we sort of offer locally in the country under our sort of brand Lumi, which is just one of the brands that we sort of distribute. And you go from a very small sort of light, like 100 watts, which is enough to sort of veg under, to 200 watts, which is enough to sort of like veg and flower, so you can actually grow the plant fully from seedling through to final harvest, to a 400 watt, to your biggest sort of watts, which are around 700 watts in terms of power. And the nice thing about cannabis is that it loves light. You can't give it enough light. Like most plants sort of plateau in terms of the amount of light that you give towards how it photosynthesizes. Cannabis is not like that. Cannabis just will take more and more and more and more and more light. So the higher the sort of power, the more light that you actually provide to the plant, the more vigorous the plant's going to be, and the better sort of yield that you actually get out of the product. But a horticultural lighting, so again, just going to the idea of you get two different chipsets. You get full spectrum chipsets, which generally produce quite a white light. They are generally quite cool. We measure lighting by Kelvin in terms of temperature. So these are generally like what we call a cool light. So it's quite high in blue. And then we have other chipsets that actually are red only. So they're making sure that there's that red light available for the plant to actually like sort of, especially in the flowering sort of stage. The plants like red light. And they have different sort of like interactions with the plant. It's quite in depth as to how that works. So I'm not necessarily going into detail. But generally, like, as a rule of thumb, you're using quite a lot of blue light during the vegetative stage where you're putting out leaves, and you're losing more red light, not necessarily only red light, during the flowering sort of stage when the plant's actually producing flower, which is actually what we then use as a product that we either smoke or extract product from itself, like oils and all that kind of stuff. So generally, if you're going to move inside, don't think that you're going to grow under like your mom's incandescents in her kitchen. Buy a horticultural light, you'll see the difference immediately. Like there's a science that actually goes into their manufacture.
And how much must I be willing to spend?
It varies quite considerably. Like the 100 watt is about, on a retail sort of basis. Now this is a vegetative light. Like you don't need a huge amount of power when you like growing leaf matter. So this on a retail basis is about 2,500 rand. But if you want like a proper sort of like light that will take you from the beginning to the end, in a reasonable space, you need something that like this, which is about 4,000 rand retail. Yeah. I understand it like sort of sets you back, but the nice thing about the LEDs is that they last probably about 5 years. So like you make the investment, you'll have a light that lasts a long time, and it's going to grow a lot of cannabis, which can and won't be profitable for you because you can't sell it, because you have to gift it to your friends. So that's the law.
Okay, where can we find you?
Well, we're Hydro Garden. We're a B2B sort of wholesaler. We're based in Johannesburg and Wynberg, Sandton, right across the way from the CBD. And then in Cape Town, we just got a new spot out in Brackenfell in the north of the sort of city, where we're also distributing. But you're also welcome to hit us up on our sort of retail channel. It's called Grow Grew. And just hit up growgrew.co.za, and we have anything that you guys want. As a hobby grower, we're the perfect sort of supplier for you guys. We have everything from propagation through to harvest, whatever you need, down to pipettes to measure out your nutrients, sort of like out of the bottles and supplements. So whatever you need, just let us know. We're here to help.
Thank you. Nice.